Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Director Watch, an AwardsWatch podcast that attempts to get inside the minds of cinema's greatest auteurs, explore what drives them, and maybe get in some crazy tangents along the way. I'm Ryan McQuade, the executive editor of AwardsWatch, joined today by my co-host, Jay Ledbetter.
And today we are going to be talking about, of course, the great director Todd Haynes. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, it's time for Velvet Goldmine, next one in his filmography. But alas, we have some, let's call them technical difficulties, Ryan.
Yeah,
and
instead,
we'll be talking about his 2002 film, Far From Heaven. So get excited.
We will have some thoughts on Velvet Goldmine, though. It was a complete error on my part. And
interesting.
I'm taking the full blame on it. It's on me.
If you didn't, you'd be lying.
I would, and there's no one else I could throw the blame to except maybe our guest today, who is our boss and the editor-in-chief here at AwardsWatch,
That hurts.
Erik Anderson.
Yes, Ryan, putting the ass in a lass in that sentence there. Well done, you flop. My God.
Yeah.
Second episode of the podcast. Already have a lost episode. We're building a certain mystique around the podcast.
It's just floating. It's in the cloud.
I don't know. It kind of feels like it's a little homophobic that you accidentally lost.
Interesting.
Like the full frontal, like really gay. I don't know. Kind of. I'm
Ryan,
not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying.
Speak to your crimes, Ryan.
I'm just
people are saying
Pride Month's
that's
over.
what it is.
And
oh my God.
And we recorded it during that month, and I can't justify myself anymore. The listeners have moved on. No, I don't. Honestly, I was clearing out a lot of space on my computer, and I accidentally, sadly, deleted the file, and it was out of mind, out of sight. To be fair, it was because I was doing such an amazing job with all the work that I've been doing at awardswatch.com that this error did happen. And truth be told, because Erik is about to go on a giant vacation, it's really his fault because I was preparing mentally for that moment to be able to take the reins. And now I just realized I can't be trusted with anything. The house is going to burn down.
Wow.
Yes, I was gonna
really
say exactly that, exactly in those words too.
But it's okay because we'll still talk a little bit about it. And Erik, you were kind of bummed that you didn't get to be on that episode and talk about Velvet Goldmine.
I could talk about any Todd Haynes film and be on any episode, but
that's true.
I am glad to be on this one especially.
Yes, because this is like your favorite movie of all time.
It's not my favorite movie of all time. It is my favorite Haynes.
It's your identity.
And it is, well, we'll get into it when we get into it. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Last time we were on here, talked about Safe. It was a good episode. Got a lot of good feedback. Mm-hmm. Jay and I did a great job. Usually that's what an editor says. Erik just says, move on and go to the next thing. And it's
there's different kinds of editors. There's ones that encourage, and there's ones that through harsh criticism make you want to be better, and that's what I want to be, is better.
Exactly. That's why I punish with my words as much as I can, but in a constructive and forceful way so that they are not misconstrued. And you don't hit the delete button on
Speak
accident.
softly and carry.
True, but our punishment now for this episode, Jay, is that he does have your child locked up somewhere where he can't be found until this episode is done. So that's
gonna be a good one.
Yeah, I can't wait to get your child back.
I better bring it.
But that film was released in 1995. Of course, Velvet Goldmine was released in 1998. It was a film that we're going to talk about, but we
talked about it for a long time.
We did. We had like an hour and a half worth of work. That movie stars Ewan McGregor, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, Christian Bale, Toni Collette. Erik, do you want to give some quick thoughts? Let's just talk about it. You want to talk about Velvet Goldmine real quick?
Not really. I want to talk about Far From Heaven. But I love Velvet Goldmine. Okay,
then mute yourself. No.
Fantastic. And I'm a big fan.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I think, I mean, on our episode that we recorded, Ryan, I think we came in a little more middling than that. I think that film has a pretty big David Bowie shaped hole in the middle of it where you kind of just wish it was a David Bowie movie.
yeah.
But I think I like it a little more than you did based on our long conversation we had before.
Yeah.
And certainly it's not a misfire by any stretch of the imagination, but it
No.
just it feels like there was more potential there, and it does very much feel like it was intended to be something that it ended up not being able to be.
Beautiful gowns. And literally because it was nominated for costume design.
I mean, McGregor and Bale are fantastic. Jonathan Rhys Meyers.
I
mean, it's a problem.
It's a problem that Hollywood said go direct to video. You know, now for the rest.
That is true. Hollywood did deal with the problem by not casting him.
Yeah.
So
And yeah, it's because he was never good to begin with.
Ouch.
But Toni Collette, good in that movie too. She's very good.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, Jay. Like it is the movie that walks so that a movie similar to it, kind of in like the construction, but with more access. Like I'm Not There, that we'll be talking about next week, could run. And,
it is an interesting precursor to that film.
Yes,
very
for sure.
Interesting.
And yeah, the music's
well. I mean,
Haynes
has gone on record that he did really want to make a David Bowie.
Yeah.
Biopic.
Right. Yeah. David Bowie was like, I'm making a movie about myself, and
then
never did.
Rights to the music didn't happen, and so he just kind of had to do what he wanted to do.
It kind of feels like a movie with one hand tied behind its back to me.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah,
it is.
And Simi, the other hand tied.
It's a really good movie for a movie with one hand tied behind its back, but nevertheless,
Bale's really good in that movie. McGregor's a ball of energy. Yeah. So.
Two balls, really. If you think
two balls and a cock. Yeah, for sure.
Jesus.
It's out there. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Anyway, then he kind of leaves the music era for a couple of years, and he comes back with this. Comes back with Far From Heaven, with Julianne Moore, who he worked with on Safe, also with Dennis Quaid, and Dennis Haysbert and Patricia Clarkson, Viola Davis. And the movie is in the 1950s Connecticut. A frustrated housewife faces a crisis and is mounting racial tension in both her home and in the outside world. Erik, of all the movies that we asked you to come on for, we asked you to come on this one because I know how much you love not just Todd Haynes. I know how much you love Julianne Moore. You are part of the fan club. You've got the jacket and everything of the fan club. One of those members only jackets, for the Julianne.
This early in my time at AwardsWatch, I didn't even realize it. But my speaking up for Julianne Moore as maybe the best actress of the last 30 years got me in Erik's good graces immediately. So
yeah, that was a good way to.
A lot of points.
Yeah, and then behind the scenes, you've slowly but surely lost.
Oh, it's a disaster. We're not going to talk about that.
No, we're not going to talk about it. No.
Yeah.
But anyway, Erik.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what you love about Todd Haynes as a director? And then can you talk to us a little bit what you love about Julianne Moore, maybe as their collaborations or just an actress as a whole? And then give us your feelings on his masterpiece, Far From Heaven.
Wow, you're just saying it right off the bat.
I mean, sometimes you just got to say it, right?
Okay.
I don't know. Do I need to even continue? I feel like you kind of.
I mean, I did, but I'd like to know what your responses are.
I'm worried if we go any longer, Ryan's going to delete the audio.
You son of a bitch! All right, here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
No. I am a huge fan of Haynes. I love his very rugged, independent, gay sensibility. With his earlier films, Far From Heaven feels like such a massive move into not a different direction, but just a mature and I don't want to say professional in a negative way, but just it's at a different level, but it's just his sensibility. I always obviously gravitated to any gay director or director that had a gay film or themes, whatever was available and how it was available. I remember seeing the Superstar Karen Carpenter story that he made, his Karen Carpenter Barbie movie, infamous as the original Barbie, infamous as it was. And back in those days, it was finding it on VHS of a copy on, like, not even Craigslist. I think it was before Craigslist. So we were just kind of circulating it amongst each other, and it was like
Did you have like a list of mailing list, and you were just passing it along from person to person?
Kind of like that, but it was really like a cinephile, list that
it's like
that predated the internet before anything like that. So it felt like an exclusive club, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
But not in a hipster way, but certainly in a cinephile way at the time, of where it was like, have you seen this? Oh my God. And I think
that's cool.
I think that, though, I did see that after Poison. Poison, I think, was the first I saw. And I didn't even know really at the time that movies like that could be made. It was so offbeat. It was so crazy. It was like Orlando was like that during the same time, where I was just like, this is something else. This is different. We've entered a different.
It does feel like he kind of snuck that one through something. It's like,
yeah.
How did he manage to get this made?
How's that a first film? How did anyone give him money to do that? You know what I mean?
Exactly. Well, I mean, I think his working relationship with Christine Vachon has been one of the greatest director producer collaborations in my lifetime. But yeah, as he just kind of built, you could see that when we just talked about Velvet Goldmine, he obviously wanted to do one thing, but was kind of thwarted from it. But his conviction to do it was still there. And sometimes that can be a good or bad thing, of not knowing, when to let something lie and move on to something else, versus kind of forcing your way through it and then have it come out. I mean, I clearly it's not what he wanted, so but I still really love it. It's flashy, it's gay, so obviously I love it. Insofar as his working with Julianne Moore, she's such a great muse, period. I think her coming up with Haynes and Paul Thomas Anderson at the same time is just insane, because they each
decent filmmakers,
and they each ask something completely different from her.
True.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that might be the best thing about her and about that period for her. And I do think Safe and her performance is really one of the very best, like Jay said, of the last 30 years, to paraphrase what you said. But then Far From Heaven came, and it felt so completely out of nature for her, yet it made absolutely perfect sense. And it's sort of kind of weirdly, unfortunately, because she also had the Hours that year. She got pegged very quickly as the go-to troubled housewife.
She got what?
And then did a lot of that. For better, for worse.
Well, between that and Magnolia and all sorts of other stuff.
Well, she also worked,
Sort of-
Well,
with
I mean
the
more like
Coens,
the prize winner of Defiance, Ohio, kind of like that era of
Sure.
housewife.
she's
It
wearing
just
the dresses.
It kind of
and
became like
yeah.
a
little
quick thing for her.
Stepford wife.
Yeah, it's like
A
when
little
you
bit.
play a villain and you end up getting cast like in 700 villain roles. Like she's
Yeah,
got the
something
look,
like that.
the wig, the hair.
The thing is, this performance is so much different than those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because those are trying
So
to be like, I feel like those movies are based on true stories, and they're also like trying to fit like the mold of this or imitating this even a little bit. But this movie is saying far more than
Like,
those movies are.
yes, it is not an imitation of life.
No, this movie is bound in artifice, which is what is one of the best parts about it. Is it is not pretending. It is obviously a sort of an homage to Sirk films. Dirty Little Secret, never seen a Sirk film, so this is going to be kind of an interesting comparison to say, I'm sure y'all are more well versed in Sirk's work than I am, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll have a different perspective than me, but I think it is actually nice to have those two versions of looking at these films, even though I know the trademarks of these types of films, so I can kind of speak broadly the language.
Yeah.
But certainly there are going to be references that just do not compute with me, and so I'm interested to see kind of the comparisons there as far as what you appreciate about this film from the perspective of a Sirk veteran, and then me, a complete Sirk novice.
Knowing you, Jay, I do think you would really love Douglas Sirk movies.
I agree.
They remind me a lot of like
embarrassing blind spot.
Yeah, they remind me a lot of like what Howard Hawks was kind of pushing the envelope with certain things within within movies, during a time when you're not supposed to. And he was just kind of like, screw it, I'm gonna talk about the Hays Code and push those boundaries and everything. Well, Jay, you said you hadn't seen any Sirk films, but you hadn't seen Far From Heaven before, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I had not. I had not seen this film before. So,
I mean, kind of give it to us straight. What'd you think of this movie?
Yeah, good movie. I gotta say, it's a good film. This is, it's a really, it's such a fascinating work because Todd Haynes is one of obviously the premier gay queer filmmakers of his era, but also he puts his female characters so front and center, even in this film where the propulsion of the plot is centered around this gay man who is trying to suppress his gay feelings. Still, at the center of the film is this woman, this suppressed housewife who is kind of at the mercy of all of the forces around her, not just at the mercy of this man who she loves, who is dealing with all sorts of impulses that are counter to the understood love between them, but also the societal forces that basically say not only that she can't leave him and not go through some sort of social shift in social status, but additionally she falls in love with a black man, and then that is like a whole nother level of social impropriety during that time. And so there are many layers to this film, and when you look at it in the context of a film that is playing to much of what we know about films of the 1940s, 50s, and maybe into the early 60s, it does strike you as something that is, it's a little bit, what I had when I saw that Steven Soderbergh and George Clooney were producers on this movie, I immediately thought, is this kind of what inspired them to make The Good German? To kind of make an R-rated impression of the Hays Code films that they were so familiar with, because this does it in a much more subtle way than The Good German does, which in some ways just feels like, what if Casablanca could drop F-bombs in it? It's a much less subtle object than Far From Heaven. And I actually like The Good German, but this
The
movie
Good
is
German's
obviously superior to.
movie.
I actually like The Good German,
but it's bad.
Yeah.
I know I'm in the minority on that one, but this film is the best version of that, where it is not trying to shock you in that way by countering an aesthetic you're familiar with content that you're unfamiliar with as it relates to that aesthetic. This film is so much about putting you in this aesthetic that you are so familiar with and not really straying away from the content. But that makes those small moments where it does stray away so much more powerful because of that. And that, I think, is one of the most magical elements of this film. And it is so achingly sincere, even with that kind of irony of playing to a different era of film. At its core, it is so sincere, and you feel that at every turn. And you also feel really the kind of independence and agency that Julianne Moore, as a performer, as an artist, was given in this role. In fact, in the script, Haynes was like, okay, obviously I'm writing this for Julianne Moore. She's going to be a redhead. And Julianne Moore said, nope, I want to be kind of the 1950s American ideal. I want to be a blonde. I don't want to be this 4% of the population redhead. And that just speaks to, one, Haynes's ability to collaborate, and also the true focus of this film and how specific it is. And you see that specificity in the visuals. There's so much like backlighting in this movie, and I saw a quote from Haynes where he said, modern films are all about lighting the scene and having the actors move throughout that scene. I wanted that 1940s, 1950s style where it was, I am lighting specifically to the actors. And you feel that. And that style is imbued throughout the course of the film. And so it is such this wonderful combination of the old school and the contemporary. And it just feels like such a personal film that it makes your heart hurt, and it fills your heart up at certain points. And at the end of the day, it's this very tragic story that makes you yearn for a better world. That, have we realized it? Probably not completely, but at least things are a little bit better than they were. I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting to kind of put into context, especially today compared to 2002. It's a great film, a really, really great movie.
Yeah. See, Erik, I don't have to worry about
well,
it.
no, I had a whole lot more to say, and but you know,
I know.
Ryan
did kind of move you right along.
Yeah, he moved right on for me, didn't he? It was kind of interesting.
Well, if you want to keep
going,
I
just want to jump in a little bit with some of the things that Jay said about the Good German in that movie, sort of feeling like, hey, we can say the F word, we can do all these things that you couldn't do in 1950 whatever. And I think one of the things that's really fantastic about Far From Heaven is that it has all of those luxuries too, and it utilizes them so sparingly that it does have more impact. And like when Dennis Quaid is on the steps of the whatever and really getting upset and just says, I just want to get this fucking thing over with, and her face it's abject horror to hear the word, to hear it in public, and you see it because you're just looking at her and her reaction. And that's kind of how you feel about it too, because I mean, generally the Sirkian elements and the aesthetic of that period are so it borders almost all the time, not on parody, but very, very close. The first 5 minutes almost really requires kind of like a learning curve for the viewer about what Haynes is trying to do, because it does feel like a skit. It's full of oh shucks and oh, it just feels
pack the kids' lunch and we'll be out the door. And are you going to be home, honey? And shit like
exactly.
that.
It's we're watching this, at the time in 2002, not 1957. So it feels like artifice, but that's what it is. The whole thing is artifice, and it's a deconstruction of it, not in the same way that like David Lynch deconstructs the 50s.
And that's kind of what it feels like at first.
But it does feel like that at first. And then you realize that it's more earnest than that.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, that earnestness rides the line between being thoughtful and being silly in the best way possible. I don't think it ever veers to silliness, because I think Haynes is so in love with this style and this period. So he's being very respectful to it. The opening scene, oh my God, I could just watch the opening and the swell and the camera crane move every single day.
You gotta love a crane. We love a crane.
Oh,
I'm telling you.
I love him in films, and I love Frasier as well. So cranes
and the score is out of this world. Good.
Oh,
It is one of those things again, Erik, that it could be
Bernstein.
It could verge on parody, but instead it does pierce through that and become this very sincere, honest kind of piece of the film itself. And it does all congeal into this thing that does feel so honest and of a piece with itself, and completely separated from any sense of irony or jokiness. So
you guys have said everything. I can just move on. We can end the episode. I'm just kidding. I think this movie's incredible. And Erik, have you seen a lot of Douglas Sirk movies? Or
a handful and enough. But at the same time, my era of watching these was in my 20s. So revisiting a lot from 30s, 40s, and 50s has not been a part of my repertoire.
Okay. I was just curious if you had the ticket stubs, but other than that.
Oh my God.
But no, because yes, I think Sirk is making those movies and those commentaries literally in the time in which it's the most dangerous to make those commentaries, because they're scandalous. They're at the time in which you're making movies where you to have those kind of conversations about race and class and sexuality and all those in that time period. It is unspeakable. Audiences had never seen it before. But the way in which this filmmaking is done, audiences hadn't seen it in such a long time, close to 50 years or 30, 40, 50, 30 years, And so you're right, there is an adjustment to get back into it. But, if you just, for us, at least going into this, we kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into, but still there is that adjustment. You're right, Jay, there's like that, I think a Blue Velvet for this type of of this type of look
a little bit,
but then that movie completely goes down like the darkest alley possible and this movie stays there and doesn't move out of its era. And for me, I think it's a heartbreaking film. It really is a truly heartbreaking movie. Jay, you hit it right on the head. This is a movie about two people that embody a lot of relationships at the time. They get married at a young age, and people talk about that. This is the American dream, right? You get a plot of land, you get out of the service, man goes and does the job mostly in the city. The woman's at home. She's, cooking the casseroles and keeping everything clean. And the kids are going to school. They live on a street with all these brand new houses and the lawn's mowed and everything is perfect. And deep down inside, we all know that that's just bullshit. Yeah. It's all bullshit.
If I can just give you a quote for Julianne Moore, obviously one of our favorites, giving a perfect encapsulation of this film in one of the interviews that I was reading. She said, "Kathy is the ultimate American optimist, and Todd has made a film about the failure of American optimism."
Yeah,
that is an incredible thesis statement of kind of this movie. She's a smart person. And we love her.
You start the movie off, and they are at the highest that they're ever going to be in this movie. Right?
They are Mr. and Mrs. Magnatech.
Well, that's the whole thing, is she's always referred to as Mrs. Magnatech.
Exactly.
She lives in the shadow of her husband.
Yeah. And she's getting interviewed, which that interview sequence is hysterical.
Oh my God.
And then everybody on the street is reading this article and what feels like a penny saver, about her. And really, it's not even her accomplishment. Like you're saying, Jay, it's his accomplishments. And it's all kind of just bubbling and brimming to the point in which then you see, Haynes show what is going on with Quaid outside of work, the temptations, to watch Velvet Goldmine and then to watch a movie like this and the depiction of homosexuality. It's so subtle, but yet it's it's romantic, but yet it's forbidden, and it is tempted fruit throughout this entire film. But then, of course, the moment in which the music swells up as she goes into the office to bring him his dinner late, like any wife would, is when he's kissing that other guy, I guess that he met at the bar. And even that sequence at the bar, it's all these lingering shots that I just thought were the perfect of Sirk, but then they also feel as if it's elevated by Haynes's maturity as a director over the course of the 3 films that he's made to that point. And it feels like a natural progression. Yeah. He's quickly evolved at this point. And it's an evolution that I think in those 4 years, he did a lot of research, obviously. And if you're going to imitate, because a lot of directors imitate, I mean, we kind of joke about, and we were making some jokes offline about like Boogie Nights. And that's a movie that is very much like a Scorsese imitation before Paul Thomas Anderson really found himself in what he does perfect as a director. Doesn't mean that movie's bad. It's just it's less of his identity than somebody else's. And
my greatest criticism of Paul Thomas Anderson is that he was more an imitator than an independent artist for the first 10 to 15 years of his career.
Yeah. And then this one is imitation, but it is also evolution of your lens and of your, obviously his screenplay in the writing of this. It's all there to start off with. And if it doesn't work then on the page, and it's not going to work there with what he's doing with the camera and Ed Lockman's cinematography alongside him in this movie, that is incredible. And it's a very big hand in hand. But I find what to me, the interesting sort of, I guess, the dynamics of the 2 central relationships in this film, because there's the relationship that Kathy has with Raymond, obviously, and then it's developed because of Frank's relationships, because he's a gay man that is repressing who he is. And I think that the scene of the movie for me is when she goes with Raymond for that day, and she goes and dances, this moment of just like pure relief for her, and she's not having to worry about Frank, and she's not having to worry about the kids or the cooking or anything. She gets to just have some time for herself. And then, of course, she gets out of the truck, and that nosy neighbor. That's when Mona clocks her, and she becomes more than just a friend to the Negro. Yeah, she becomes like, you're in a relationship. And when Frank comes home, yet she's not. No, she's not. It's a friendship. That's the thing that's fascinating about this. No, it is, because we know the truth. We know the truth that this is just a friendship. This is just for her.
Well, it's not that straightforward, though. It's in this area of gray where she clearly has feelings for this person, but she feels like she has an obligation to someone else, and it's just very much that 1950s repression where it's like you can't be honest about how you feel, especially as a woman in the 1950s.
Yeah. No,
but I think especially almost anything with her story with Raymond Deegan pretty much could fly in 1957 still.
Yeah.
It's just barely above that in terms of content and how it treats it. It's really Dennis Quaid's gay story that takes the leap. It's the only thing that takes the leap outside of 57 to really be able to say something that would have had to have been very, very coded at the time. You couldn't even really imply that he was gay. It would have to be something else that then was subtext for him being gay.
Only the doctor and
some other thing that was alluring him, but not a man. But that is also part of why they don't have to have a relationship, because the gossip and the impression is the thing that does the damage. It doesn't matter what the truth is, but she's also has such an exact balance of naivete in her very progressive white woman feminism as a friend to the Negro.
I made donations.
Just to be clear,
she has some very. I would have voted for Obama for a third term energy.
Yeah, very very much.
At the art museum.
I just want to be clear about what the phrase that I'm using, which is in the film, and it is part and central. I'm not like just pulling this out of my ass. It's why I don't really look at their relationship as a romantic one. Because it begins before she finds out about her husband.
Yeah.
I think it is an attraction, but I do think it is much more about her actually discovering what her progressive beliefs are and really mean.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to, give money to a cause. It's another to spend time and be with someone.
I also think it's her making a decision for herself that isn't within the conformity of what is normal in the society. So she's meeting Raymond and going and having an outside the bubble experience. And what's funny is then the bubble then attacks back and it spreads like wildfire. And the hypocrisy of Frank to get drunk and yell at her about how that relationship will reflect on his reputation, which if only they knew what his reputation behind the doors were. I find that is one of the most fascinating scenes in this movie, is that line of dialogue of Frank just getting extremely mad at her and how she you can see in that moment how sad it is. And from just talking to Patricia Clarkson and talking to Dennis Quaid about the idea of all she did was get in a truck and go with this guy. Yeah, she danced with him, whatever. It was normal things that anybody does, but because of the reality,
but it wasn't normal things that anybody does.
And I mean,
it doesn't have to be impulse that was unnatural.
It wasn't kissing another man in the office.
No, but that's what I love so much about it is, right, you have this completely artificial love between Frank and Kathy that is deemed the American dream, and then you have this organic, completely natural affection between Kathy and Raymond, but that is deemed unnatural by the people surrounding them. And it's all about these cultural and socioeconomic boundaries that are not supposed to be crossed, that are just so incredibly powerful. And it's just it's a complicated film, and so many movies like this, even that are almost especially that are made today, are so proud of themselves and pat themselves on the back for how progressive they're being.
Mhm.
And this film is not that. This is a film that is entirely about itself and not trying to impress people. And that's Todd Haynes to a T. He is not trying to put on airs about what he cares about. He is capable of showing what he cares about organically, and just kind of incidentally, they end up being these important movies, which is a sign of a truly great, important filmmaker.
Sure. For sure. Jay, did you obviously did your research, you looked up. Did you we know that Moore was in line. He wrote the part for her, but do you know who he wrote Frank for?
I don't think I saw this.
Erik, do you know who it is?
There's actually a few people that were
Yeah.
offered, and like Russell Crowe was.
So it was originally intended for James Gandolfini to play the Frank character. This would have been James Gandolfini at the height of The Sopranos, which actually I think would have been fascinating for him to play this character in playing one of the most male macho, sexist turds in history. But I found that to be interesting. He couldn't do it obviously because of all the filming there.
I think
Russell
that would have been
was
worse.
next.
I got to be honest.
Russell Crowe
I
was
would
next.
not have liked it.
Russell Crowe was next, but he thought the role was too small.
I know.
Which I mean, it makes sense. He was like
been good in this. Actually,
Crowe was like the biggest movie star of the time.
He was This was post.
Was post Gladiator? Yeah. Yeah. And then Jeff Bridges was the other person considered.
Yeah, and he wanted too much money.
Yeah. So they settled on McQuade.
I think
McQuade makes sense.
Is a fantastic choice here.
He's great here.
I think he is incredible. His breakdowns are terrifying and extremely sad.
His shift changes too, and like from being so sad to angry,
and he has a sense of desperation to him that I think is one of his great assets as an actor.
Like
it's also very interesting to think about now in the context of kind of his political leanings and great.
That all of that aside, but I love his line reading at the party when he's already sauced and they're talking about them as a perfect couple, and he's like, it's all smoke and mirrors, and I'm just like, girl, yes it is.
You are messy. All right.
I didn't realize how much rum people drank in the 1950s. They're all about rum.
Yeah, is that like a Northeast?
My tais were like, no, my tais were such a huge thing. Oh my god!
This was the tiki. This was the tiki boom.
It was
the puka shells and all.
I love the ladies' little Mai Tai lunches. One for me, and then Patty Clarkson's like fucking knocking them back.
They're not just having a glass of wine. They're having freaking hard cocktails. I
feel like Patricia Clarkson's another person that got kind of just put into this genre as well too,
maybe because she's absolutely fucking flawless here.
Yeah, she's always so reliable. She's always reliable in like these kind of parts too, where she's just coming in here. She's, I love that she's like her friend and there for her and kind of warning her as she's kind of getting closer and closer to Raymond. She's giving her these warnings, and then she just kind of cuts her off, and it's like, you didn't listen. You were towing the line, and you crossed the line, and even if everything was innocent, and then that whole community just turns on her, and you have to be able to buy into it. And I thought Clarkson was just great, but Quaid's got this like kind of, you have to buy, I think, Frank in the beginning of this film where he's just kind of going by himself and he's kind of able to just kind of like slither in and out of the movie theater to the back alley.
He also looks like he could have been a movie star in the 1950s.
Yeah, he looks like he's down a couple bottles of booze before he got on the set. You know what I mean?
No,
But he's
he
also
has,
just
You know, he's got the
traditionally
face,
very
the block,
handsome,
yeah, the handsome face, and the like. You know, like he's
which is why
it's
Gandolfini doesn't feel like the right choice to me.
not at all. Not at all.
I don't know. I think it could have worked.
Quaid absolutely has this very all-American quarterbacky kind of look to
That's
him.
why
Very square jaw and angles. Killer bod at the pool. Absolutely banging. My
man,
goodness.
that scene at the pool where the black kid goes in the pool and then everybody else.
Well, that's a shift change. Jeez Christ, Jay.
No, but it is. I mean, that's
you're talking about it.
You just reminded me.
You're talking about his body, and he's talking about the context.
But the context of that scene where it is so much this kind of tranquil idea of what that time was like, and then that complete record scratch, just heartbreaking moment it's so powerful. And that is the best part about this movie, is that it plays so straight and honest to kind of that period, and then it's those small little twists that are not overly melodramatic. This is certainly a melodrama in many ways, but it doesn't overplay its hand, so that those moments that feel unfamiliar to that kind of filmmaking, they hit so much harder. And there were 5 or 6 moments in this movie that just rip you in half, and that is one of them. And also he looks great. So
yeah, he looks great. Yeah. But no, I mean, Haynes chooses to punctuate moments rather than kind of just keep them going. The scene in the pool, definitely. When Raymond and Kathy are talking from the theater, and she's like, I can't talk to you anymore, and he grabs her hand, her arm, and the guy from across the street is, what are you doing, boy? Yeah. And everybody looks, and these moments are punctuated and representative, and for a movie like this, it's exactly what it needs to be.
But they aren't overused.
No, that's what I mean. We aren't hit over the head to a point where we're just kind of giving in to it.
Punctuated which is the perfect expression.
They're placed right also at the right time, especially for the development of the story and where the characters are at. I think that whole trip sequence, from the moment that they, decide to do it, this last ditch effort, even watching this again, I was kind of like, oh yeah, that's right. Like this is what a couple would do. They're on the rocks a little bit. You know what I mean? They go on a trip, they come back, they hand out all the things that they got for everybody on the trip. And then they tough it out for another 15 years, 20 years. And then they do another trip, you know what I mean? And that's just how it was. And I
kind of love though, that she introduces to him as the present, all of these foreign exotic places. And then it's Miami. And he's like, I know I can get some dick in Miami. Yeah. So he's like, this is where we're going.
There's that incredible reverse shot as the young guy is standing in the doorway in the mirror. Mm-hmm. I mean, so much of the cinematography here it is again, that wonderful blend of so much of the lighting is so classical and so much of that Sirk era, but a lot of the compositions are much more contemporary and reminding you of kind of the Todd Haynes that we knew before and would come to know after. It's a great meshing. It's a wonderful pairing.
I just love that New Year's Eve scene where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna kiss my wife, but you know who I'm looking at. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then I mean, that's exactly what it is. And yeah, I agree with you, Erik. But like also too, the trip to save them is the thing that is ultimately the final straw that breaks it all. And that's that final phone call conversation about when they're going to meet to sign the divorce papers. And even to that moment, you can just tell that it's all been artificial. It has all been artificial. He has never taken one goddamn interest in in her her schedule, her life, the kids, all of it, which is really interesting because Julianne Moore is the savior of all gay men. So the movie is kind of I'm just kidding, but
those kids are pretty fucking annoying though.
They are. I mean,
so
poor Viola Davis. She's got to deal with them all day long.
She was another person.
She's great in this movie, though. She
was pigeonholed into a certain type of role for a while after those.
Yeah.
Although Soderbergh used her very, very well.
Soderbergh did. Yeah. Oh man, Viola was like stuck in that lane for such a long time until
I think she's very good in this though. I think she's very good.
Well, she is.
She's been good in other stuff.
Well, she's kind of playing like roles. She's playing that role, but it's also like her eyes are watching everything go on, and she's almost like the last thing that's keeping her together.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording about accents, and we were talking about that Julianne Moore doesn't use like some over the top mid-Atlantic accent like maybe Cate Blanchett would have used,
or so many of those actresses, a Katharine Hepburn accent.
Exactly, and that's actually
far from heaven.
Moore's accent is really kind of up there, but in general, everybody in this, whether it's her or Quaid or Davis or Clarkson, are not using jokey accents to kind of keep this. Maybe it's a parody, maybe it's camp thing going. Davis does not have a really offensive
thing.
Let's just say made sounding accent.
Yeah.
Clarkson definitely sounds, upper class and wealthy, but it's not comical.
No.
Quaid isn't either. Nobody is. Haysbert isn't either.
I think
nobody is.
I do want to push back. I do think that she is the one that if anyone is doing one, it is her. But as hers
is affected on purpose.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. Hers starts as something, and then as the film is and everything is hitting her, it is becoming less and less that. It is like she is in a dream and she is waking up from it as each event is happening, and by the end,
she's just putting on an affectation.
Yeah, she is putting on that face, and then by the end, she's just like, "Fuck it, I'm not doing that anymore." And that's and that's what I think about her.
Those first 5 minutes, she sounds like Shelley Long doing Carol Brady in the Brady Bunch movie. That's how affected it is.
That's a good call.
Yeah,
that's how affected it is. And then you settle into
the Brady Bunch movie, right? Who directed the Brady Bunch movie?
I'll look that up. I'll look that up if you want to talk. I'll look up who did the Brady.
No, sidebar. Brady Bunch movie is one of the greatest movies of the 20th century. Betty Thomas. Thomas, actress Betty Thomas.
Betty Thomas. Grace has done some Grace and Frankie episodes recently. Did John Tucker Must Die?
She had the highest grossing female directed film of all time for a period of time.
Poor Patty Jenkins.
Anyway, back to Far From Heaven.
See, he's here and he's not going to let us get on these.
I don't know what you heard in that intro, but it says maybe we'll go on some tangents every now and then, Eric.
I heard that, and then I did listen to the Safe episode, and that tangent was like 30 minutes, and I said,
"She did Doolittle.
We're not going to do that this time.
She did Doolittle with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, I think that was the movie.
Private Parts.
That was. Anyway,
28 days.
Far From Heaven and Todd Haynes. This isn't a Betty Thomas retrospective.
The Late Show.
Totally valid and something we can do at a different time.
Sounds good.
Only you.
Yeah. You know what? I'm taking over the editing right now. I'm just gonna live edit this.
Oh, she did Alvin and the Chipmunks the Squeakquel. Anyway, all right, that's it. That's all she's done. That's it.
I love the Squeakquel.
Yeah, Eric, do you like a good Squeakquel? Anyway, keep going.
You're nuts. You're nuts. That's what I have to say about that.
And acorns. Anyway, no,
that's all. That's all I wanted to say. I wanted to focus on the voice work in this because we had talked a little bit about that, and it is so fantastic and fascinating to me that that
Man.
Moore does start at one place and work her way to something that is more just not monotone, but just
More is more.
more.
More is
Less is more. More is less.
Do we call this a tragedy? Is it a tragedy, or is
An
it
American tragedy? I don't think
God,
it's a
that
tragedy.
sounds so
no.
hard. Sounds so hard.
No. Because
what
at
is
the
it?
end
Just
of at the end of the day, I mean, Quaid is like, cool, I'm just gonna go be gay. Peace.
She's got the house, probably the kids.
Yeah, but you know, it's that rail station ending is, it's so funny that
it's tragic.
That's tragic.
Yeah, it is.
But in the same year that we have the Hours with their train station sequence, very different. But yeah, it just I can never think of one without thinking of the other, ever.
There's no bad noses in this.
That is a good point, Erik, where you have Dennis Quaid kind of, even if it is in secrecy, it seems like most people will kind of turn a blind eye to him because of his status and kind of what he represents, whereas Julianne Moore is the victim of expectation.
She's the one that's going to be wearing all the scarlet letters.
Yes.
Yeah. He's going to get off scot-free, much like many men do in this era.
I don't know who scot-free is, but he probably will get him off.
Well, it reminds you of like Mad Men, right? How Don Draper is able to just get away with the way he treats people, and that show obviously leads him down a spiral, but he's able to go from woman to woman and everything, and he's got a family at home because he's in the city most of the time, and you're able to be almost two different people, and literally by the end, imagine that by the end of this movie, he's like, yeah, I'm just going to go off, and he's probably going to pay for everything and take care of everyone because that's what they did, even though this movie is suggesting that all normal, decent things of that time that people would, do seem to fall out the window with this pair.
But is Kathy just going to be sad for the rest of her life? I mean,
I think she's probably going to be pretty fucked up. Yes, because this is 1957. This sounds a
little bit like a tragedy.
Okay, yes, it is. Fine, yeah. I'll give you that.
It's tragic
because there are characters in the film who are not tragic, but it is so centrally focused despite all these other things going on. It's interesting to view it through this lens of maybe our main black character is going to go onto a place that will make him satisfied. Maybe our gay character is going to go onto a place where he feels satisfied. Yeah. But our central figure, a woman who seemed to be living the American ideal, is going to be the one who is stuck in this purgatory for the rest of her existence.
She's got no friends.
Well,
or she I mean,
I don't know if she ever had any real friends.
Yeah, does she have real friends? Does she have somebody to really really talk to, really be able to trust? The movie is talking about a lot of that.
The thing is that each of these three people, because we're watching this now and this is in 57, we know essentially what their futures hold because we know what the path of civil rights, women's rights, and gay rights are after this moment. Yeah. We know the path that people can presumably go down once they leave their little hamlet in Connecticut in 1957.
And it's kind of opens up more once you leave your bubble, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And
Quaid's absolutely just gonna bounce and go to New York, and he'll be at Stonewall in 1969 and doing poppers and
have a mustache.
Absolutely, 100%
mustache, and they have a big old Sam Elliott mustache.
It's a great Patricia Clarkson. It's a great Sharp Objects prequel for Patricia Clarkson.
Anyone want to talk about Haysbert? I think he's pretty extraordinary.
Yeah,
in
we
this
really
film.
haven't given him his
He's-
flowers. He's great.
Yeah, he's really great in this. I mean, obviously he becomes the president of the United States on 24 after this and everything, and he's like in every commercial now. But like
He's
this,
such a steady figure.
he's so
A figure of great admirability and integrity. That's what he possesses more than anything else, is this sense of integrity.
you trust him.
And he possesses that in this film as much as any other.
Yeah, Erik.
And that integrity really is what causes perhaps the greatest emotional tragedy within Kathy in this film, because Haysbert, as Raymond, has these other responsibilities that he has to put even more at the forefront of his life. Fatherhood is a hell of a thing, I gotta say, and that's kind of what he's prioritizing here.
Yeah, that scene when she goes to his apartment house and everything there. It's that in that moment of that, both of them know that if there is something to explore more there, they can't, because he's got to take care of his daughter. He's up, and they're a black family, and she's got to take care of her kids, and she's still married, doesn't know about that. And I mean, they can't even get in a car, or they can't talk to each other on the street without something clashing. So the idea of this being something that can continue is just not in the cards. And yeah, I mean, the word is tragic because it's of the potential of something. It's not even that they had it. It's the potential of what it could be. And it's something that I think will, when she goes to the train station and they see each other, they look at each other and acknowledge that the potential of it was probably something that could have been good.
It's very brief encounter.
Yes. Very brief encounter by the end. I don't know, Erik, what you think about Haysbert.
I love Haysbert. I think it's a really interesting thing with him here, and honestly, when any let's say white writer director has to write a black character, and how they treat them and how they want them to be represented, and it can be a really fine line between giving a black character respect and value as a character and putting them on a pedestal to a point where they become not a fully developed person, but a representation.
An ideal.
Yeah. And this honestly gets really close to that, because Raymond is a gardener's son, but he is extremely well-versed in art. He is overqualified in anything that he would be allowed to do in Hartford, Connecticut. And I think that does, like a lot of the movie, rides the line of how he is treated and regarded and how we are supposed to with him. But then he kind of gets to that point at the art show when Kathy, says to him, oh, I, donate to Negro causes and I'm a friend of the Negro. And he's like, well, thank you for that. it's kind of like, that's like, great.
Thanks. Can we just look at this painting?
Exactly. and that cuts through that.
Yeah.
So well.
Yeah. No,
and
for sure.
It might be one of my very favorite moments with Haysbert, because it just takes a performer that understands that moment really, really well, because it is funny, because you're kind of laughing at her and you're laughing with him in acknowledging that. And that is, I think that is the key difference, is that we're not just admiring him, we're absolutely relating to him in that moment.
Yeah, and I think also too there. I mean, there is sort of an innocence, I think, from the beginning of their first encounter. I mean, but it's also, of course, it starts off with racial tension because they say, "Oh, this man's in my garden," and it's um the music doesn't swell up. It would in the 1950s. I tell you that. It would be like, and they'll like, and zoom right to the, follow her and zoom right out the window and everything. But um she, just within that conversation, you can see the journalist look through her window and see that they're just having a normal ass conversation. And they're literally talking about how his father, who was her gardener, passed away. But yet people's eyes and the perception, I think that's what's so great about this movie. And then obviously when you talk about Carol down the road, it's like perception of that time and how Haynes is able to capture it in just looks and glances from everyone throughout the film as they're just doing essentially normal conversations, normal things, like getting out of a car. It's not that big a deal, but it is for the nowadays, but for the time it absolutely was. And it felt like it spreads like wildfire. This just, oh my God, did you hear this and this? And he gets that down, even a little bit heightened to a certain extent, but he still gets that down perfect within everything too. And I mean, I love that when her response to Frank, when he explodes at her about his reputation, she is the first time she's lied to him. And it is that, don't worry, I've already fired him, but she hasn't yet. So she's got to get the gumption to do that the next day. And the way that she tells it to Patricia Clarkson is vastly different in like a 45-second span in film time than when she tells Dennis Quaid. And you can hear a hinge of pain in her voice when she has to say that. And her whole act of like like everything's fine, I could put on the smile. It goes away completely, because and that's what I love too about when she's at the party earlier in the film, this big party that she's putting on the act, even though he's acting, drunk off his ass. And then when everyone's gone, it's dropped immediately because she's pissed because he ruined something for her. And yet in a lot of ways, he's ruined a lot more than just that. Their lives she's in complete shambles at this point. And then she just even a couple scenes before, she's just asking him about how the doctor's office visit goes. He blows up at her. And it's because he just never cared about her. She's just a check mark off in a lot of ways.
That stigma of psychiatry at the time.
Yeah.
It's very much.
Yeah.
You're glib, Matt. I understand the history of psychiatry.
But also too, I mean, if she's asking him about it, then it's forcing him to talk about it. And he's like, fuck you. I don't want to talk about it.
He's not going to
you.
That's what I'm saying. He's not going to talk about it, but if he is going to talk about it, it's not going to be with you. And you can feel almost the disdain there. And so that's why anything after that, the trip and all that stuff, you're just a time bomb ticking away. And it's the downfall of that marriage.
It's the best Quaid, right? Surely. This is the best Quaid.
What is the last, you know what? Shout out to Sophia Simonello, our writer here at AwardsWatch. She asked me this question because of that Soderbergh miniseries that just came out. That's, I guess, on HBO, or not. It's not HBO Max. It's just Max.
Yeah.
That like they just dropped. And so the real question becomes, when was the last good thing he was in?
Quaid?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to take that he's kind of good in The Intruder. But
what's The Intruder?
Yeah, good.
It's the
good
one
question.
where there's a young married couple who do they buy his house, or Megan Good is in it.
Oh God.
and he's like, "You're moving into my house. I don't like that." And then he like torments them.
Oh.
Is that him? The
intruder.
The intruder.
Yeah,
It's him.
I don't like the sound of that.
Michael Ealy, Megan Good.
Oh my God.
Yeah, came out in 2019.
It's like a horror thriller of
Yeah, I'm gonna pass on that.
He's done like A Dog's Journey, Midway. This is stuff he's done in the last 4 years. American Underdog, remember that movie? Strange World, Eric's favorite movie of last year with Jake Gyllenhaal.
Hey, I like Strange World.
Dog's Purpose. What's your mileage, you guys, on Truth? The movie with Robert Redford and Cate Blanchett. Good, bad? What do you think?
Haven't seen it.
Eric, you remember
I'm gonna say bad to mid.
Okay.
It's no Switchback with Jared Leto.
Honestly, this looks like his last truly good movie.
Yeah, it does. It
feels because this was after Parent Trap.
This was after Parent Trap, after Traffic,
after The Rookie.
Hey, the day after tomorrow.
Solid.
Yeah, the day after
Jake Gyllenhaal.
In Good Companies in 2004.
You can have The Day After Tomorrow.
You know what?
And keep that one.
This is your last day.
He had a really big 2004. He had Flight of the Phoenix remake. He had In Good Company. He had The Day After Tomorrow, and he had the Alamo remake. And then, after that, that's a huge year for him. A lot of those movies made some money, especially Day After Tomorrow. And In Good Company, I mean, is a good movie with him and Topher Grace. It's good. Was it Paul Weist? Yeah, Weist. And then after that, it's completely Dudsville. So
I mean, shout out to him for being
we talk about Julianne Moore
piece of continuity in the A Dog's cinematic universe. He's in both A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey.
Well, it's just funny to look at his career and how just meandering and terrible it looks, and then you look at Julianne Moore's career, and she, this takes her even to like next levels, and then she goes on to win an Oscar and all this other stuff. So it's really fascinating to see their careers. Eric, do you have anything else you want to talk about? We brought you on
about my actual favorite scene in the movie, which is after the rumors are all out and the daughter has her little ballet recital and she's late. And she goes and she's like, "Where are your friends?"
Oh, and the mothers?
They're over there. And the mothers are all absolutely holding their kids and judging her. And Kathy is holding her daughter super close and giving these women a death stare that should have absolutely murdered them on the spot, incinerated them. I would, if Julianne Moore looked at me like that, I would just kill myself.
Yeah. No, I love that scene too. It reminds me, it's almost like the kind of polar opposite of that scene at the birthday party early on in Safe, where she's got her daughter right there with her, but like she's having this internal breakdown. And so in this scene, it's that she's got her daughter right there, but she's the one in control and looking and judging upon and giving them this fierce kind of look at and like you're mentioning, Eric, like this like, you're gonna judge me. I know everything about all of you pieces of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
pretty much. She goes, yeah. I mean, she's there at the Mai Tai lunches too. So
yeah, I know all the dirt, and also too, it's nobody is perfect in this world, and so no, I love that. Anything else?
But also, she has nothing to defend herself over.
True, but
she has nothing to be ashamed of.
No, she doesn't have anything to be. That's the point. It's just like they're giving her this look, and it's like, you didn't even give me any of this shit. You don't know any of the context. You're just hearing it secondhand. But that's, of course, bitches like that at that time.
You call me lady. You don't know my life.
I have sickness all
around me. And it's my husband because he's a homosexual.
You love that scene, right, in Magnolia, Eric? right?
Of course I do.
It's wonderful.
It should be like a monologue that every single actor does for their audition.
Yeah, if you can't do
Seen
that, you can't
the
be
Louvre.
in a movie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that a joke? Isn't that a joke they make in Barry that should be everyone's monologue?
I think so. I think that they try to do it or something like that. Anyway, anything else, Erik? No, you're all good. Okay.
I don't know. Are we talking about like award stuff?
We'll get to that here in a minute.
Or
we'll
is that the whole like save for Jay to
We'll get to
yeah.
it in a
talking
second.
about
Gosh,
award stuff, and we're
on
there.
episode 2 here, and you're already ruining the structure.
The
Jay,
magic of having a person who rejects the idea of award season is it provides good content on an
because the
website.
The absolute dust that was paid at the Oscars makes me sick to no end.
Jay,
as well, I'll wait since you got to test Jay.
Interesting.
Jay, any final thoughts you have on Far From Heaven?
Well, now I'm scared about my predictions for this film's awards propositions. No, I mean it's a phenomenal film. It's one that I think really reveals itself to you after the fact when you kind of think about all of the choices that were made in the film, because there's so many deliberate choices that were made in the movie. And it's a film that I really look forward to watching again, especially after I go and check out some Sirk films, because it is, you guys, y'all are right, where it is easy to compare this film philosophically to something like The Good German, and The Good German is trying to bang you over the head with, this ain't your mama's Casablanca. Whereas this film is like, this is kind of like that. And then when I make these subtle changes from that code era, it's going to hit 14 times harder. Whereas The Good German kind of dulls itself because of how explicitly and specifically it is going against the grain of the content that was allowed during the code. And
that's not always a bad thing, because something like LA Confidential does it fantastically.
Yeah, and I think Soderbergh and Clooney, they kind of figure out the mold by the time they do Good Night and Good Luck. You know what I mean? Which is kind of a movie for this era too, even though that's, much more dramatic and stripped down than,
But I think I think you think of an example of kind of that subtlety where it's like, this is kind of what you're familiar with. Is I think pretty early in the movie, one of the kids says, "Aw, geez."
"Aw, shucks."
Julianne Moore is like, we don't use that kind of language in this house.
I love that so much.
And I'm like, okay, this is firmly planted in that era. And it really does have that sensibility to it without somehow, I mean, it is kind of one of those things where I'm like, I don't know how they pulled it off, but it doesn't feel winking or insulting or ironic.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where the magic of this movie is it's honest to God, heart on its sleeve desire for these characters to attain what they want and just to be happy, with the acknowledgement that they're not really going to be fully satisfied, especially Kathy, who ends up in this place of torment and uncertainty. It's a really, really fantastic film.
Yeah. If I didn't say it before, I'll say it now. I think Moore's absolutely incredible in this movie. I feel like I didn't state that early on.
Where's this on the Moore hierarchy? What's the best Julianne Moore performance?
This is right up there. This probably is the best Julianne Moore performance. Right, Erik?
I gotta look it up.
I mean, it is certainly this, Safe, and Boogie Nights are all constantly wrestling for the number one spot.
Yeah, Boogie Nights.
Yeah, she's trying to think
of
the
woman in the window.
You know what? The disrespect.
Well, Erik, you do like Still Alice. You like?
I love Still Alice.
Is she still Alice?
The story of my life.
I wasn't
Julianne
gonna
Moore
make...
is really, really freaking good in one of my favorite films of all time, Shortcuts. She's amazing in that.
She's incredible.
Yeah, she's
A Single Man. I think she's incredible in that film.
Yep, should have been nominated.
Should have been nominated for sure. I got to go back, just give two final things before we play the game and get out of here. Is I want to shout out Ed Lockman again. I think the cinematography in this movie is absolutely incredible. Those crane shots are, I mean, the final crane shot at the end to kind of wrap it all up. I just think it's incredible, and the sort of love those shots of just like essentially this, this era, this town, this place, and it looks so peaceful and it looks like a postcard from an era. But then of course there's all this, there's all this drama, and it's, and just right under the surface and on the surface as well too. And then the score. I just think the music is it's not over the top nearly as much as the era that this movie is emulating, but I think it's just kind of perfect for the film that Haynes is presenting here. And Haynes is so confident behind the camera, but also behind the script, and in creating these characters that are just multi-layered, and you're able to then buy in and truly into the heartbreak that these all the characters really faced by the end of the film, and that their lives are completely changed, and yet it's gonna they'll all go back to the grocery store the next day, and some of them will all play bridge together, and it'll all be just looks, and it'll be as if like that's the lady down the street, pity her, look at her, and ooh, and everybody will just, from going forward will say things rather than just be a human being, and kind of just, not be gossipy. But I think it's a masterpiece, and one of the first that we'll be talking about, I think, in this series. But Jay, before we get out of here, we're going to test your award season knowledge with a game based off of a film that we just reviewed, which is Far From Heaven. And a segment we like to call It's an Honor to Get Nominated. All right. So, Jay, this movie was at the Academy Awards that year. Can you tell me how many Academy Awards it was nominated for and what it was nominated for?
So, in my reading of some of the interviews, they did ask Haynes specifically, what is it like being in the mix for award season?
Mm-hmm.
So I know this was involved at the Oscars to one degree or another. His quote when they asked him how he felt about being actively a part of award season was, maybe I'm not enjoying it as much as I should be. I don't know what all this is going to do to me. So clearly he was not, the most active, perhaps, promoter of his own films during this era. And also this was not a Weinstein involved production. So I'm guessing it wasn't a complete runaway as far as awards are concerned. But yeah. Surely Julianne Moore got nominated.
You are correct. Anything else?
I'm guessing it got a screenplay nomination.
Yep.
Period film, so costumes?
No.
Production design?
No.
Disgusting.
What? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you.
Wow.
How many other nominations do you think it got after besides
well, outside of those? I mean, so I had two. I thought of two that it surely would have been nominated for.
Okay.
And the other two technicals, I guess, would be the score and cinematography.
It is nominated in score and cinematography. It is nominated for 4.
It got both of those?
Yes, 4 Academy
Awards.
It
got nominated for 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was not bad.
Yeah, but it's not enough.
It should have gotten those others. It should have gotten those other two. That's insane that it didn't get those others. Yeah, and it didn't get a picture.
No, or director.
And it also didn't get supporting actor, even though Dennis Quaid won a whole bunch of critics awards too.
He was nominated
and nominated
Globe and
SAG and SAG.
Yeah. Wow. Art direction that year was Chicago was the winner. Frida, Gaines of New York, Lord of the Rings, The Two Tower, and Road to Perdition.
The worst part about it losing score is that it lost to the absolute worst score, and the other 4 all would have been absolutely perfect, incredible winners.
So, Jay, it was the score for Frida, which I know you play every day when you go to work.
Oh my God. That's my jam.
Road to Perdition from Thomas Newman was up against him. Philip Glass's work on The Hours, Bernstein here for Far From Heaven, and John Williams for Catch Me If You Can.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Those three alone, the Williams, Bernstein, and Glass.
That's just
those are
Newman's
three
work too.
of the most iconic scores ever.
It's bullshit. That's
It's
what it
gross.
is. Yeah. Costume designs.
I
Chicago won. Frida, Gaines of New York,
Fine.
The Hours, and The Pianist.
So there were just a lot of period films this year.
Yeah.
A lot of big period films. So it got kind of pushed out by those.
It should have been another year of double Sandy Powell nominations because she got in for Gangs and she also did this.
Yeah. Which I would argue this is much better work than Gaines of New York. Not
So
even
if I'm looking at
Significantly.
so best picture,
Chicago.
I think this movie is better than everything that was nominated.
You think it's better than everything that's nominated for?
Yeah, I think it's
Okay.
better. The only competitor, I would say, controversially, is the Pianist. I think
Pianist.
it's quite good,
Okay. I would.
but I think it's undoubtedly better than the others.
Well, this goes back to a tale as old as time argument between you and myself about Chicago.
Which is a film I like. I like.
I really like Chicago. I don't know. Is it better than Far From Heaven?
No.
Toss up. No, probably not. I love Two Towers. That's my favorite part of Lord of the Rings.
That is my favorite as well.
So I would say that it is definitely better than Gangs of New York. I don't know if you watched Gangs of New York recently, but like Gangs of New York,
Gangs of New York is that good.
It has not aged particularly well. That whole, like, besides The Aviator, that era of Scorsese is by far his worst era, that early 2000s.
The first 25 minutes of that movie are incredible.
Are you talking about like the Liam Neeson
part?
Yeah. And then after that,
incredible.
Like, I don't think that, like, Leo gets, like, if there was a Leo movie this year that gets a bunch of credit and a bunch of noms that it should have been Catch Me If You
Can, my guy.
And
I don't know, Spielberg.
Have you seen? No, me too. Have you seen The Hours?
I have. It's quite good.
It is quite good. I haven't seen it in a long time.
I haven't seen it in a long time either. And they just no, it wasn't The Hours.
Yeah, well,
I haven't seen it I haven't seen it in a long time. But
yeah, but that was when
thinking they just announced the criterion, but that was for The Others.
That was for The Others, which I honestly I cannot wait for that movie. It's gonna be so damn good. But director that year, Polanski, Rob Marshall, Scorsese, Daldry, Pedro Almodovar for Talk to Her.
That's a good film.
That's a good movie. I would put Haynes in there. I'd probably take out. Polanski.
Rob Marshall is one of the worst things about Chicago.
See, you're doing this. Don't do this. Not on this show. We can't do this today.
I mean, Far From Heaven is undoubtedly a better directed movie than Gangs of New York.
Yes, but it's also I can't get rid of Martin Scorsese. What are we doing here?
I can get rid of Martin Scorsese in this instance. He does not have to be there for Gangs of New York. But
okay. Would you? I'm assuming, Eric, I already know you're going to give Nicole Kidman, take that Oscar away from her and give it to Julianne Moore, correct?
Yeah, and actually, I told Julianne Moore that, like, to her face.
Did?
I told her she should have won, and she was very nice about it.
She was probably going to be like,
when me and Julianne were hanging out, I didn't tell her that, but I should have.
You were like, you should have won.
We're good friends, but I've never actually told her.
Are you though?
That's actually a really good Best Actress lineup, to be fair, in my opinion. I think that Zellweger for Chicago.
It's a great lineup.
More Diane Lane for Unfaithful. Salma for Frida. I would give it to Julianne Moore. Or I just give it to Renee Zellweger, so then we didn't have the other two wins, but that's just me. But anyway, Jay, you did a good job. that's going to do it for
Thank
this
you.
episode of Director Watch. Erik Anderson, can you tell everybody out there where we can find you and all of your amazing work on the internet?
At awardswatch.com, and please subscribe to the Awards Watch newsletter. You can't miss it.
You can't miss it. It's all over the
subscribe.
internet. It was like trying to read something on the website the other day. It was like newsletter, read your newsletter.
It was. I'm like Newsies.
I recently got directed to the Extraction 2 review on awardswatch.com. Holy cow. What a talent that writer is.
At the time of yeah, that guy's pretty good. Also, the guy who ever wrote that Oppenheimer review, what a stud. Anyway,
Hack.
Jay, can you tell everyone where we can find you on the internet, please?
Oh, just go ahead and find me on Twitter at Mr. J. Ledbetter, and that's plenty.
And and also your work here at AwardsWatch.com.
And at awardswatch.com.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade77. You can find all my work here, including some reviews that I did for Mission Impossible and one half of the Barbenheimer debate over at awardswatch.com, as well as all my other work at Playlist, FilmSpeak, a bunch of other places. Next week, here on Director Watch, we will be talking about Bob Dylan and Todd Haynes' film, I'm Not There.
Bobby
we will have a guest on, and it is our great colleague here at Awards Watch. It'll be the great Sophia Simonillo will be joining us to talk about that film in the years, probably also 2007, that wonderful film year. So thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.